Hi guys, I'm Prajwal and today I'm telling about literary criticism. In the literary criticism, our topic name is nature and functions of literary criticism. In this video, I'll tell 4 points. First one is the definition, and second one I want to tell you the principle of criticism. This is also very important to in your exam. And third one is functions of literary criticism. This is also important. And fourth one and last point in our video, literary criticism versus literary theory. So this four is also very important. So now I want to tell you definition. So what is the definition of literary criticism? Etymologically, the word criticism is derived from the Greek word meaning judgment. It is an exercise in judgment. Literary criticism is the exercise of judgment on works of literature to examine the merits and demerits and finally to evaluate the artistic worth is the function of criticism. Thus, literary criticism is the study, discussion, evaluation, and interpretation of literature. Literary criticism is the evaluation of literary works. This includes its classification by genre, structure, and judgment of value. Literary criticism asks what literary criticism asks what what literature is, what it does, and what it is works. How would you interpret the definitions of literary criticism in your own words? Let's look at the answer below. Literary criticism helps readers like you and me interpret the literature we read. Each literary theory provides us with a different way to looking at a given literary work, which can ultimately real important aspects about it. But what are these important facts? Literary criticism helps us to understand what is important about a literary text. For example, 3 points is there. Please note it. Its structure, its context, social economy or historical context, and how the text manipulates the reader. So, in short, literary criticism helps us to understand the relationship between authors, readers, and literary texts. The act of literary criticism ultimately enhances the enjoyment of our reading of the literary work. What does this literary work mean? The work itself is placed in the center because all approaches must deal to some extent or another with the text itself. Hence, here is 4 point. Please note it. Different approaches or lenses help us to discover rich and deeper meaning. Each lens has its strengths and weaknesses. Each lens is valuable. Try to become a pluralist rather than an inflexible supporter of own. Criticism is the exercise of judgment in the area of art and literature. It is the overall term for studies concerned with defining, analyzing, and evaluating works of literature. It refers to description, analysis, interpretation, and evaluation of literary works. Literary criticism deals with different demonstration of literature. According to Griffith, prior to the 20th century, the investigation of the nature and value of literature had a long and distinguished history, beginning with Plato and Aristotle and continuing into a beginning with the Plato and Aristotle and continuing into modern times with such figures as Sir Philip Sidney, John Dryden, Samuel Johnson, William Wordsworth, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, and Matthew Arnold. But their investigations, focused primarily on evaluation, not interpretation. They explored what literature is and praised or condemned works that failed to meet whichever standards they deemed deemed essential. In the Republic, to cite one extreme example, Plato condemned all literature because it stirs up the passion, lust, desire, pain, anger, rather than rather than nurtures the intellect. Now we are going for second main important topic of this session, the principles of criticism. This is very important. We know criticism, what standard of judgment should a critic follows, and what qualifications and instruments or equipments should possess. Every literary work has three elements: one, matter, manner, and capacity to please. Means aesthetic pleasure. Earlier critics divided rules by which technical excellence, plot, construction, diction, style, matter, and language of literary work. These rules have always changed with time. Essential quality of literature is not how rightly such rules are followed, but appeal to the imagination, human nature, and subsequently principles of literature are held universal and permanent. We observe three such principles. The first principle of criticism is the pursuit of truth, as poetic truth is the truth of ideas and experience of a work of art. The truth literature is different from the truth of science. Poetic truth is the ideas and experiences of a work of art. The second principle is concerned with symmetry or construction, which implies the right selection and arrangement of material. The principle implies right selection and arrangement of material. The writer should select certain aspects of reality and not all reality, and then his material should be so arranged as to throw the selected aspects of reality into sharp relief. Aristotle stressed on this. In his view, it is essential for that artistic beauty on which the imaginative appeal of literature depends. The critic must examine if the various parts of the composition are originally related to each other or not, whether they are proportionate to each other and to the composition as whole or not. The test of the symmetry is indirectly a means by which the presence of the dominant artistic quality can be discovered and measured. The final principle is that of idealism, which implies the aesthetic or beauty artistic or beauty consciousness of the reader. The selection made for artistic treatment should be so made that unpleasant aspects to aesthetic consciousness of reader is kept away or minimized by virtue of which a work of art gives pleasure. Now we are looking for third main point of this video, that is functions of literary criticism. This is short and important. The function of literary criticism is to examine the merits and demerits or defects of a work or art and finally to evaluate its worth. The chief function of criticism is to enlighten and stimulate. The true critic is the one who is equipped of his task by a sound knowledge of his subject. The true critic can discover the qualities of power, beauty, and depth of significance. He can give us a fresh point of view. He is sometimes a pathfinder breaking new ground with a friendly passion. As such, the primary functions of literary criticism are interpretation and judgment. Another important factor to note is that the view of criticism is directly related to the critic's own intellectual philosophy or outlook life. It is determined by the likes, dislikes, and prejudices of the critic himself, and this is equally shaped by the socio-political sensibilities of the critic's environment, such as critical theories are shaped by the spirit of the age. Fourth and last very important topic in your exam and whole literary criticism is a literary criticism versus literary theory. It is very important. Even though modern literary theorizing and criticism emerged during the 19th century, both attained greater heights in the 20th century. In fact, the 20th century could be appropriately termed the age of criticism. The richness and the complexity of literary theory can be seen in the many critical movements that sprang up and in the enthusiasm with which many critics practiced the art. The impact of the new psychologies was deeply felt in criticism. In the preface to a history of literary criticism, A.N. Jeffers gives no form for any doubt about the kinship of literature, literary criticism, and literary theories. He says, the study of literary requires knowledge of context as well as of texts. What kind of person wrote the poem, the play, the novel, the essay, what forces acted upon them and acted upon them as they wrote what was the historical, the political, the philosophical, the economic, the cultural background, etc. The argument of Jeffers is that for literature to be on course, it becomes expedient that a structure is put in place to reveal its meaning beyond the literal level. Broadly, texts of literature would possess two levels of meaning, the literal and the superliteral. The superliteral meaning of texts of literature is the ideological implication of the same which criticism attempts to resolve. The task of resolving the crisis engendered in literary texts is possible through the formulation of some parameters and paradigms, which are technically termed theories. Theories are meant to interpret and evaluate works of literature with the mind of revealing the in-depth implications of such works. Thus, literary theory and criticism is an unavoidable part of studying literature. Literary theory and criticism aim to explain, entertain, stimulate, and challenge the student of literature. Literary theory and criticism make literature refreshing, informative, and stimulating in many ways. Some of the ways include: literary theory and criticism help us to achieve a better understanding of literature, a better understanding of the world in which we live. Automatically comes along when we study literature, and the study of critical theory makes that enterprise even more productive. Literary theory and criticism can not only show us our world and ourselves though new and valuable valuable lenses, but also strengthen our ability to think logically, creatively, and with a good deal of insight in analyzing works of literature. So, what then is the difference between literary theory and literary criticism? A theory as a body of rules of principles used to appraise works of literature. Literary theories were developed as a means to understand the various ways people read literary texts. All literary theories are lenses through which we can see texts. You cannot say that one is better than another, or that you should read according to any of them, but it is sometimes fun to decide to read a text with one in mind, because you often end up with a whole new perspective on your reading. As you read the different texts in your literature courses, you will realize that to study literary theory is to seek to understand exactly how readers or critics interpret or criticize texts, especially literary honors. Most scholars today world agree that there is no single meaning uh, waiting to be simply found in any text. It is our role as readers to produce meaning in other words. It is a function of the different interpretative uh, strategies which we as readers apply to a text. Thus, a cardinal rule of modern literary criticism could be summed up as follows: the answers you get from a text depend entirely upon the kind of questions you put to it. Strictly speaking, when we interpret a literary text, we are doing literary criticism. But when we examine criteria upon which our interpretation rests, we are applying literary theory. In other words, literary criticism is the application of critical theory to a literary text. Whether or not a given critic is aware of the theoretical assumption informing informing his or her interpretation. In fact, the widespread recognition that literary criticism cannot be separated from the theoretical assumption on which it is based is one reason why the word criticism is often used as if it includes the word theory. Let's proceed to examine the qualities of critic. The qualities or characteristics of a critic. It is also important for you to know the qualities of a critic. Namely, here is 10 qualities you need to buy these all qualities if you want to become a critic. First one, he or she must be someone of rare sensibility, have a rare and unique sense of judgment. Second one, he must be someone widely read. Third one, he must have proper training and technical skill in different branches of literature. Next one, he must rise above all prejudice, personal, religious, national, political, or literary, so as to be objective. Next one, he must have imaginative sympathy, be sensitive and human. Sixth one, he must possess a sound knowledge of human psychology and human nature. Seventh one, he must have knowledge in all branches of literature. Eighth one, the critic must get at the mind of the author. Ninth one, the critic must have a philosophical mind. And last one, must be of varied experience, thoroughly acquainted with the great authors in several languages. So now I am completed so many points in this video: definition and literary theory versus literary criticism, etc, etc. So nature and functions of literary criticism, this is all natures and functions of literary criticism. So it is very important, and some teachers exam it was asked, so please note and read carefully. Now we are ending this video. We'll meet in next video. Bye for now.